It started like any other Tuesday. Nothing special. Just another long day at the warehouse. I'd worked a 12-hour shift, my back was sore, my hands rough and calloused from lifting heavy pallets, but I took pride in it. Honest work may not be glamorous, but it's what kept food on my table, and apparently, cocktails in someone else's hands. As I pulled into the driveway, Mr. Jenkins, my elderly neighbor, was out watering his petunias. He waved and smiled, then casually said, "Haven't seen your folks lately. Must be nice, huh? That cruise looked incredible." I blinked. "Cruise?" "Oh yeah," he nodded. "Your sister posted photos online. Looked like the Bahamas. Your parents looked like they were having the time of their lives." My body froze before I could even respond. A cruise? The Bahamas? Just 3 days ago, my mom had called me sobbing, telling me my dad's medicine cost more than they could afford. She said the heating bill was overdue and they didn't know how they'd make it through the month. I had sent them $800, more than usual. They sounded desperate. Now they were on a luxury vacation? I walked into my house in a daze. The silence inside was loud, the air heavy with betrayal. I sat down, grabbed my phone, and opened Facebook. I barely used it, but today it was my window into a reality I hadn't been invited to. There they were, my mom in a sundress I'd never seen before, my dad holding a fruity cocktail, both of them standing next to my sister Laura and her rich husband on the deck of a massive cruise ship. All smiles, all sun, all joy, funded by me. In that moment, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen, heart pounding, realizing that the people I trusted the most had lied to my face and used my hard-earned money to toast in paradise without even bothering to tell me. That was the moment everything changed. I wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding, some way this wasn't what it looked like. But as I sat in the dim light of my living room, surrounded by silence, I opened my banking app and began to dig. What I found hit me harder than any words ever could. There it was, clear as day. Weekly automatic transfers to my parents' account. $600 every Friday. Never missed one. It started a year ago when my dad said he lost his job and my mom's health was declining. I didn't hesitate. I picked up overtime, skipped vacations, canceled my gym membership. Anything to make sure they were okay. But now, scrolling through my transactions, I saw the $800 I'd sent just 3 days earlier, tagged Dad's medicine. And just hours after that deposit, they were boarding a cruise ship to the Bahamas. My hands trembled as I kept looking. The week my mom said the fridge was empty, that same weekend she was tagged in a photo at a fancy steakhouse in Miami. The time they begged for help with overdue electric bills, a $300 charge appeared in their account the next day from a boutique jewelry shop. I checked the timestamps, the geotags, the smiling faces in every photo on Laura's feed, the new watch on my dad's wrist, the bracelet on my mom's arm. All of it bought with money I was told would keep the lights on. Every excuse, every tearful phone call, every "we're barely getting by" was timed like clockwork with lavish dinners, weekend getaways, and luxury shopping sprees. They weren't just taking advantage of me, they were lying, repeatedly, purposefully, calculated. I reread old texts. "We're so proud of you, son. Just until we catch up. You're our rock." Words that used to comfort me now felt like knives. I had become their personal ATM. And the saddest part, I thought I was helping them survive. But all I was doing was financing their luxury while I ate frozen dinners and skipped dentist appointments. The betrayal wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern, and I had finally seen it for what it was. For years, I thought I was being a good son. Whenever my parents called with another emergency, another broken appliance, another overdue bill, another tear-filled, "we just need a little help to get through the month," I gave. No questions asked. I told myself it was my duty, that I was lucky to be in a position to help them while they were struggling. I skipped vacations, put off upgrading my car, even took on weekend shifts, all because I believed their pain was real. But now everything looks different, and honestly, I feel like a fool. Every story they told me, every carefully timed phone call was part of a calculated performance. The more I replay those moments in my mind, the more the cracks show. My mom crying about the heating bill while wearing that new coat I thought she'd borrowed. My dad swearing they were eating canned beans, yet someone was dining at upscale restaurants every weekend. I brushed it all off back then. I didn't want to believe my own family would lie to me. I filled in the gaps for them, assumed good intentions, ignored the discomfort. Now I realize they weren't just taking my help. They were manipulating my guilt. Every call came with the perfect mix of urgency and vulnerability. Every "we understand if you can't help this time" was designed to make me feel even worse. They knew I wouldn't say no. They counted on it, and every time I pushed back, even slightly, the guilt trip kicked in. "We raised you. You'd do this for your sister, wouldn't you? We just don't know what we'll do if you can't help this time." Over and over again, but none of it was real. Their struggle, their desperation, it was all a story, a script, and I played my role perfectly, the dependable son, the quiet provider, the one who never asked for anything in return. Now I'm rewriting that script, because the truth is, I was never helping them survive. I was helping them maintain a lie. And I won't do it anymore. Growing up, I always knew my sister was the favorite. Laura was the golden child. Charming, pampered, effortlessly adored. She could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was the one who kept things running in the background. I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and eventually built a life for myself through sheer grit. But none of that ever seemed to matter. Even as an adult, when I was the one covering their mortgage, paying for their groceries, and sending them money every single week, it was still Laura who got the praise. She had married into money, and that seemed to matter more to my parents than anything I had accomplished. They bragged about her to neighbors and family friends like she was the child who made them proud, even though she hadn't lifted a finger to help them. It stung, but I kept telling myself that maybe they were just old-fashioned, that they didn't mean to overlook me. I swallowed the bitterness and kept giving, until one day, everything changed. That was the day I found out they were on a luxury cruise with Laura. The same parents who had called me days earlier, crying about overdue medical bills, were posting photos online, sipping cocktails in the Bahamas. They were laughing on the deck of a cruise ship, smiling with Laura and her husband, while I was clocking overtime to keep up with their latest emergency. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even told. And that's when the truth hit me like a freight train. No matter how much I gave, I was never going to be enough for them. Because it was never about who supported them. It was about who they preferred. And their love, it turns out, was conditional. It was performative. It was blind to the reality of who had truly been there for them all along. Laura got the hugs, the praise, the vacations. I got the bills. Not anymore. I used to believe every tearful phone call, every trembling voice on the other end saying, "We're behind on bills," or "We don't know how we'll afford Dad's medicine this month." I never questioned it. They were my parents. They raised me. Of course I'd help. So I worked longer hours, skipped vacations, cut corners on my own life so they could keep the lights on. Every week, like clockwork, I transferred money, $600, sometimes more, straight into their account. It was the least I could do, I told myself. Family takes care of each other. But that illusion shattered the moment I opened Facebook. There they were, my parents, posing in sunglasses, drinks in hand, on the deck of a luxury cruise ship. My sister Laura by their side, all smiles. The same people who had called me crying 3 days earlier now looked like they didn't have a care in the world. The timestamps on the photos matched perfectly with the day they said they were too sick to answer my calls. The extra $200 I sent for Dad's urgent medication, that was spent on cocktails and souvenirs. My hands trembled with fury as I scrolled through more pictures. Mom in a sundress I'd never seen, Dad flashing a new watch, Laura gushing about how her husband had treated our parents. And in the comments, my parents thanking their children like I had been part of it, like I hadn't just unknowingly funded their entire vacation. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was emotional. Every heartfelt plea had been a lie. Every thank you message a manipulation. I wasn't their son. I was their bank account, a walking, breathing ATM they could guilt into submission. The anger burned hot, but underneath that was something colder, grief. Grief for the version of my parents I thought I knew. Grief for the trust they'd shattered. They didn't need my help. They just wanted my money. And the moment I realized that, something inside me changed forever. They didn't just steal my money. They stole my trust, and I wanted it back. It took someone outside the storm to help me see just how hard it was raining. Anna, my girlfriend, had been gently pointing it out for months. The way my parents only called when they needed something, the way they seemed to forget my birthday, but always managed to host lavish dinners for Laura and her family. I brushed her off at first. They're just going through a rough time, I'd say. Or, they raised me, I owe them that much. But the night I showed her those cruise photos, she didn't say, I told you so. She just sat beside me, held my hand, and let the truth hit me like a freight train. And that truth was brutal. I started looking back, really looking, every so-called emergency that perfectly aligned with a holiday or a weekend. Every time they cried over a broken furnace or overdue rent, only to post pictures a few days later out at dinner with Laura. The designer purses, the golf clubs, the new jewelry. All while I skipped meals to make sure I could cover their needs. They didn't just rely on me, they used me. Anna had seen the pattern long before I had. It's always a crisis, she once said, but it's never their sacrifice. It's always yours. And she was right. When Laura needed something, they called it a celebration. When I needed something, they went quiet. I was never invited to dinners, never asked how I was doing. They didn't check in, unless their bank account was low. It all clicked. The calls, the guilt trips, the way they made me feel guilty for not doing enough, even when I had nothing left to give. I wasn't the son. I was the safety net. The one who always showed up. The one they could count on. Until they couldn't anymore. That night with Anna wasn't just about betrayal. It was about awakening. The kind you don't come back from. I saw my family for who they really were, and I knew things would never be the same again. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I called in sick to work. Not because I was sick, but because I needed to confront the people who had made me emotionally sick for far too long. The drive to my parents' house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. It replayed every moment of manipulation, every guilt trip, every time they looked the other way while I shouldered their burdens. And now, with all the lies laid bare, I wasn't going to stay silent any longer. When my father opened the door, still in his bathrobe, the look on his face said everything. Not guilt, just annoyance, like he knew the game was up. My mother appeared behind him, nervous and smiling too wide. "Mike, what a surprise," she said, her voice higher than usual. I didn't return the smile. "How was the Bahamas?" Silence. My mom looked away. My dad didn't even pretend. "You weren't supposed to find out about that," he said. No apology, no explanation. Just the blunt admission that their entire story, about medicine, overdue bills, and being on the verge of losing everything, had been a lie. "3 days ago, you begged me for money to cover Dad's prescriptions," I said, pulling out my phone and showing them the $800 transfer. "You used that for fruity cocktails on a cruise?" Dad shrugged. "Laura and Richard paid for most of it. We just needed a little spending money. My spending money, my overtime hours, my skipped meals. All used to fund their getaway, without an invitation, without honesty. You didn't think I deserved to know?" I asked. Dad gave a short, cold laugh. "You wouldn't have fit in. It was a luxury cruise." That sentence was the final crack. I stared at them. These people who shared my blood but not my heart. And I felt nothing but resolve. Right there in front of them, I opened my banking app and canceled every automatic payment. "You'll have to find another ATM," I said quietly, "because I'm done." They didn't apologize, they just looked panicked. Not because they hurt me, but because they lost their funding. And that told me everything I needed to know. That day, standing in front of my parents, I realized something powerful. I had the choice to stop. For the first time in years, I could say no, and mean it. I didn't need their permission. I didn't owe them more chances. They had shown me exactly what I meant to them. A wallet, a lifeline, a tool, not a son, not someone to be loved, just someone to be used. So with my parents still frozen in silence after I confronted them about the cruise they went on with my sister using my money, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My hands were steady even as my heart pounded. I scrolled down to the automatic payments, the same ones I had set up a year ago, $600 every Friday without fail. Sometimes more when they said it was an emergency. Over $30,000 in total. Gone. I clicked cancel. Wait, Mike. What are you doing? My mom's voice trembled. You don't mean that. Yes, I replied. I do. One by one, I canceled each recurring transaction. Utilities, groceries, the emergency fund. And then I blocked their bank account from future transfers. Done. Just like that, the financial umbilical cord was cut. I had always thought it would feel scary. It didn't. It felt like breathing fresh air after years underwater. My dad's tone shifted immediately. Gone was the dismissiveness. Now he sounded like a salesman trying to close a deal. Come on, son, let's be reasonable. You're making a mistake. No, I said, voice calm but unwavering. You made the mistake. You lied to me for years. I supported you without asking questions, and you turned me into your personal bank account. They begged, promised things would change, said they'd be more transparent, but none of it was real. Not love, not remorse. It was all about the money. That's when I knew I wasn't abandoning them. I was saving myself. I walked out of that house with nothing in my hands, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I had everything. Clarity, peace, and control over my own life. A few days after I canceled all the payments, I thought the storm might have passed. I was wrong. That evening, just as Anna and I were settling into dinner, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there they were, my parents, standing side by side with my sister Laura just behind them, her husband Richard lingering awkwardly at the edge of the porch. It felt like a confrontation staged for maximum guilt. My mom had tears in her eyes. Mike, we need to talk, please, she whispered, clutching a tissue. My dad wore his usual scowl, a mix of disappointment and frustration. Laura, of course, looked immaculate, her eyes already brimming with judgment. They didn't waste time. My dad stepped forward. You're punishing your own family, he said. We made a mistake, but this is too far. I didn't invite them in. I didn't budge. You didn't make a mistake, I said calmly. You made a choice, over and over again. Laura chimed in, her voice syrupy and condescending. You're tearing this family apart. You don't realize what you're doing to Mom. She can't sleep. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof, and it's all because you're being stubborn. I crossed my arms. Number. It's because you've all depended on me without a second thought for years, and now that I've stepped back, the system's falling apart. They tried everything, bringing up my childhood, the car they helped me buy, the times we celebrated Christmas together. Laura even threw in a dramatic tear, as if rehearsed. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I saw through it all. You only showed up because I cut you off, I told them. Not because you care, but because the money stopped flowing, and I'm not your solution anymore. My mom started to cry harder. My dad muttered something about being ungrateful. Laura called me heartless, but I didn't flinch. I gently closed the door with Anna beside me, her hand in mine. For the first time, I chose my peace over their chaos. It's been 6 months since I walked away from my family, and for the first time in my life, I can finally breathe. The silence that used to terrify me has become my sanctuary. The late-night calls begging for help have stopped. The guilt that clung to my chest like a weight has lifted. These days, I wake up with peace, not panic. My mornings aren't haunted by text messages about overdue bills or frantic phone calls about emergencies that always seem to conveniently land right before a holiday. Instead, I get to enjoy breakfast with Anna, my fiancée, who saw through the lies long before I could. We talk about our upcoming wedding, something small, intimate, filled only with the people who genuinely love us. There's no seat saved for my parents, no invitation mailed to my sister. That's not bitterness, it's clarity. Walking away from them wasn't easy. Years of emotional conditioning had me believing that love meant sacrifice, that being a good son meant being a provider, no matter the cost. But love without respect isn't love, it's control. And family without appreciation is just a contract written in guilt. Once I understood that, everything changed. Now I spend weekends planning trips I never allowed myself before. We're looking at a cabin in Colorado for winter and maybe a beach trip this summer. I opened a retirement account. I bought new furniture. I even took a cooking class. These things might sound small, but when you've lived in survival mode for years, they feel revolutionary. My life isn't centered on fixing someone else's mess anymore. It's focused on building something beautiful, with someone who sees my worth, not my wallet. Sometimes the memories creep in. Old habits whisper, maybe you should check in. Maybe they've changed. But I've learned to pause, breathe, and let those thoughts pass. Because letting go of people who hurt you doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. And for the first time, I'm not living to earn love. I'm living because I already have it, from someone who never asked me to burn myself out just to feel needed. Life lesson. You don't owe loyalty to people who only love you when you're useful. One of the hardest truths we can face is realizing that sometimes the people we love most are the very ones who take us for granted. This story is more than just about money. It's about emotional boundaries, respect, and the courage to choose yourself. Too often, we're taught that family comes before everything. But what happens when that family uses love as a leash and guilt as a weapon? The lesson here is simple but powerful. You are not responsible for anyone else's irresponsibility. Love should never be transactional. It should lift you up, not drain you dry. Helping others is noble, but not when it becomes a pattern of sacrifice with no gratitude in return. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to say no. It's okay to put yourself first, especially when the ones demanding your help would never do the same for you. Choosing peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. If you've ever felt like you're only loved when you're giving something, your time, your money, your energy, maybe it's time to ask if that love is real. You deserve people who see your worth without conditions. People who show up not just when they need something, but because they genuinely care. If this story resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters. Because sometimes hearing someone else's truth helps us find our own.